Greetings, everybody. Welcome to TV Skywriter. I'm Patricia A. Murray, your host. This show emanates from Durham, North Carolina, where I live now, originally from Chicago. TV Skywriter is where I talk to people, writers, musicians, creative people, entrepreneurs from around the world. And this is going to be my first guest from Canada, so this is really awesome. So let me tell you real quick, if you'd like to be a guest, just write to durhamskywriter@gmail.com. And let me introduce my guest. His name is Mr. Habeeb Salloum. He wrote this fabulous book. Check it out. Okay. Asian Cooking Made Simple, a culinary journey along the Silk Road and beyond. Welcome to the show, Mr. Salloum.
Oh, how are you?
Doing fine. And I just want to point out, people might see someone behind you, and that someone, hello, is Muna,
Hello.
your daughter.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the world of Asia.
All right. And since you said that, you know what? I want to point out one thing, and that is you are Canadian, which means you are using the word Asian the way the English people use Asian. I just want to point that out to our USA audience, that very often in England and Canada, when they say Asian, very often they are including the people of Pakistan and India, people that we call here Middle Easterners. So with that, I just wanted to make sure that we're understanding why you're saying Asian. So for this book, what countries are you covering in this book with all these beautiful...
I've covered every country from the Mediterranean to the Philippines, across Western Asia, Central Asia, and the Far East. And I haven't covered every country, literally, but I have the major countries. And have the cooking of the major countries, which I created the traditional dishes to my taste.
Okay.
And made them simple so people can enjoy them, enjoy cooking them. Because people, I heard so many, even my sisters, my mother used to say, it's so complicated, we can't cook that, or we can't. And I found a way to make them simple. By substituting condiments and taking them and the instructions and simplifying them. And I found that by doing that, you gain taste and you gain love of the food.
Okay, so what makes it difficult? Are there a lot of steps to take? Or is it that there's so many different spices? Because we know that there are a lot of spices involved.
Yeah, well, there is the spices, but all spices can be substituted. I found the greatest thing with the modern age was the internet. You put down what spice can you substitute for cumin, and you get a dozen answers. But then you find out through tests and things. People have ideas. And I found, like, I substitute all the spices that are hard to get, that are really hard to get, by spices that are relatively easy to get or easy to get. And it helps the people who don't live in big cities and live in the country or the Midwest where there's no available. But out here in eastern Canada and eastern United States, and the western coast, there's a lot of Oriental stores, and you can buy actually more food than you can find, we'll say, in a shelf in China. You could find more here in some of those.
That's amazing. Now here in Durham, North Carolina, we have access to a lot of spices and different types of food as well, because we have pretty diverse population.
In my lifetime, it's been a big revolution, because as a child, I never, nobody wanted to try foreign food. The joy of everybody wants to try it. And you couldn't buy anything. Even Middle Eastern foods you couldn't buy. Like, I had to come to the big cities to be able to buy it. Mm-hmm. And now you can buy, like in Toronto, you can go to a restaurant every day, different sect, different country, and 365 days a year, and you'll never eat the same thing if you don't want. So it's a real world of culinary world of everything you want to say about food.
That's amazing. Now, how would you characterize Asian or Middle Eastern cooking? I mean, I've only had a few dishes, and I am familiar at least with curry. I don't know if that says a whole lot. But would you characterize that, how can I put this? Is there something similar that ties all the different countries together? Anything in particular that's pretty much standard?
Well, rice is standard of Eastern Asia and even Western Asia too. It's quite standard, although they use wheat products there. Eastern Asia rice dishes are pretty standard in all these countries. Barbecued meats are pretty standard. Well, and the soups are pretty standard. They're a little bit different some countries, and some soups, but you can find similar soups in different countries. And then the stews are pretty well, let's say. No, it's everything is a little bit different. I believe myself that the food of the Far East, of the Asian Far East, is originally all Chinese, and it's spilled over to the different countries on the side, and they developed their own way of doing it, and because they all have a little similar basis to them. Except if you go out the west, the Middle East, then it's different cuisine altogether.
Okay. So how did you choose the recipes? Because I have to say, I'm not much of a cook, but in flipping through the book, I realized I can probably carry off many of these recipes because they seem very manageable. So how did you manage that?
I took, here in Toronto, like we go every week at least to one different type of place because I'm afraid about it, or we're gonna. And so I took the food I ate, the dish I ate. I always try to make a similar dish. I talk to the cook, or I do research it, or I traveled a lot. I traveled in Malaysia, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, and I picked up all these different dishes as I traveled. Then I picked up dishes reading about them in the papers and in books, and I tried them out. Then took and thought of the ideas to make them simple. If I couldn't make them simple, I never used them. And so I thought that I wanted to make a book where anybody could pick that book up in the middle of nowhere, and even if they're not cooks, they can cook a meal out of them easy enough. And I thought that I'd do something for people that liked the Asiatic foods, but thought they were beyond their reach, made them available for them.
Like this dish.
So is your interest in the, because you said you have put out about 12 books, and some of them are cookbooks. So did your travel inspire your interest in food, or did your interest in food result in your traveling?
Okay. By the way, Patricia, can I have my daughter start? We're going to make a dish.
By all means.
It's called ginger chicken, and it's from Thailand. And normally you would go to a restaurant and buy it and enjoy it, but this is home cooking, and it's delicious, very, very simple to make. And I'm going to start off with 4 tablespoons of olive oil. I'm going to heat it up, and then I'm going to add ginger, shredded ginger, and garlic, of course. And what else am I adding? Well, that's the first step. And then and the chicken. I'm sorry, and the chicken. The chicken it's chicken breast that I've cut up into little half-inch pieces, and stir fry it for about a minute. So while you're talking, I'm going to get all that ready. The next step is to add the sauces. The sauces include fish sauce, oyster sauce, and soy sauce. So the delicious nature of these 3 sauces together is phenomenal. And that's the taste that's going to be added with that garlic. And I'm going to be adding some sugar as well, because we're going to be adding some hot pepper. This is on page 46 of the book.
46. Okay.
46. And then after that, we're going to be adding very thinly sliced red pepper and very thinly sliced onions and mushrooms. And ladies and gentlemen, that's it. That's how simple it is. So it takes about 20 minutes, maximum 30 minutes. Depends on how well you want the chicken cooked, but it'll be cooked well. and then it's ready to serve. And my father usually serves it with rice. Okay, so I'm going to be busy here doing this.
Okay, wonderful. You know what? That makes me want to ask this question. When I look through some of these recipes, I do notice a lot of hot stuff, hot sauces and spices. If you don't like, the hot stuff, is it possible to leave it out and not change the recipe too much?
I left a lot of it out in my recipes. Or if they said 2 hot peppers, I put a little quarter pinch of cayenne or something.
Uh-huh.
But know that people like I hear don't like, and most of the world don't eat really hot stuff except like Mexico or India or countries, around that. Most of the world don't like real hot stuff, although it's good to have a little. And I've done that myself. And you can do it, by the way. It says there's a quarter teaspoon of hot chilies or something.
Yeah.
You put in a little pinch of chili or a quarter teaspoon or something. All depends. All of them. It doesn't take that much from the taste, unless you're a fanatic hot food lover. It doesn't take that much from the taste, and actually, for a person who's not used to hot food, they like it better if you take some of the hot stuff out.
See, even the smell now is delicious. Oh my God, it smells so good because of that ginger and garlic combination. Absolutely delightful. And you should add also one other thing. My father has in his book the use of the wok. If you don't have a wok, you can use a frying pan. Except with a wok, you use less oil, for example, and that's his recipes reflect the wok more than they do the frying pan. So in the case where you don't have the wok, all you have to do is add an extra couple tablespoons of oil, and that's it. Same thing, same concept.
Nice.
Now it's making me hungry with smelling the food cooking.
I wish I could smell it from here, but I'll just have to suffer quietly.
It'd be nice if we could have an interview and we're dining on this. Yeah, it's so good to. It's one of the pillars of life, I think, and we live for a few things that are main pillars of life, and food is one of them. And if you make tasty food and don't suffer too much in making it, you enjoy it, and you enjoy eating it.
Nice. So, Mona, did you learn to cook from your dad or your parents?
I learned how to cook when we were little kids. My late mom, she was the one that taught us how to cook the standard, because we're from Syria originally, so we made Syrian dishes. How to make the dough, how to make the sweets, the traditional sweets. We carried them on, for hundreds and hundreds of years. They're still going on in this kitchen. And then my sister, who's married, she taught her daughter how to cook, and the boys also are familiar with it, but their children will probably learn. It's a tradition. You don't want to lose that tradition because now you've emigrated and you're part of this new part of the world. But the tradition identifies who you are in a sense. So we learned how to do all that. My mother used to teach us how to measure with her. She put everything in her palm of her hand and say, you need this much or this much spice from the fingertip, that kind of thing. My dad revolutionized my life because mother didn't believe in measuring. My dad does. So when he started to write cookbooks, his first one, I remember my mother had to measure everything when she tried the recipes, but she got into it lately after that. But that's how I learned from both. So when we make a good Canadian turkey, I use my stuffing and my dad's basting. Keep peace in the family.
That makes sense, though, because old school cooking, Southern style, also involves people just using a pinch of this and a little handful of that. And I guess if you want to standardize it, I guess you have to start measuring.
But the reason I'm very proud of my father, this new publication, is because he simplified everything. So where I work, I work at a university, so a number of the people I work with don't have time to cook. They're always going out. They complain they're always going out. And it's basically the fear of the unknown. They don't, they love Iranian food. They love Vietnamese food. They love Thai food, Malaysian. They go out, but now it's getting more and more expensive. So if they don't know what spices to use, they're afraid to use it, they don't know how much to cook the chicken. So now, this book will solve the problems, okay?
That's very true. And this is the book. It's called Cooking Made Simple. And I actually want to thank Heather Ripke for setting up this interview. This is published by Sweetgrass Books, and it's a division of Farcountry Press. I just wanted to be sure that I mentioned that. Wonderful, wonderful book. It's really fun.
Thank you. Good.
Oh,
You
Mr.
know,
Salloum, I need to ask you about the spices again. In the beginning of the book, you do list a lot of spices.
yeah, I list all the spices that I use that are hard to get that people don't know about. I didn't list the common spices like pepper, like cumin, like
Uh-huh.
coriander, spices you buy in the corner store. I didn't list all of them, although I have one or two of them. But what I figured people didn't know about, I listed there. And I listed substitutes, by the way. The spice,
Right.
most I put under, you can, use this spice as a substitute, or this spice as a substitute. So I sort of covered it, but if they read the condiments on the front.
But you know, it makes for really good reading because when I'm reading about these spices, I seem to be getting a history lesson or at least a
Yeah.
travel log. And I mean, just
Yeah,
as
because I love history and I like writing history. And I wrote little stories. Well, I didn't do too much in this book, but in other books that I've written, I write a little story for every recipe. Like a historical anecdote or a historical little poem or something. Okay? Yeah, so it's
And he called it the Silk Route, the journey on the Silk Road, simply because of the great influence that Silk Road had on world history, right?
yeah.
yeah, with the transfer of food that came along the road for thousands of years. That's why in China they never used to they never used to eat lamb, or very rarely. And but when the Muslims came from the West and brought lamb barbecue, now it's one of their main dishes. You know,
That's
so
interesting.
the rice, which came from China, came out west and became one of the main dishes of the Middle East. If all this came along the Silk Route, or the ocean route, they have, but mainly along the Silk Route in China. And like I said, it's spilled from China. From China went to these other countries like Malaysia and Thailand, which has great Chinese influence, but they also have the influence of the Middle East because of the Silk Route.
Sure, sure. Have you had any feedback from people, from these different cultures whose food you're exploring?
Pardon me?
Have you heard from, any feedback from people from different countries? I mean, people of different cultural backgrounds in Canada, perhaps, who are saying, "Oh, you really captured our traditional dish really well."
I heard. Well, although it hasn't been very many months that it's been spreading, at the end of last year it came in. Look
for your other books.
But people have come. They're really surprised, and people like it. The publisher tells me that, that they're all fascinated with it out in Utah and these places, So I think it's going to be a hit. I think, you can't tell. Yeah. I'll tell you next year.
Okay, the dish is basically done now. There you go. See? All done. Now
Wow.
just wait for the chicken to cook. It'll take about 15-20 minutes, and that's one of the easiest recipes to make.
Wow, page 46. I might have to try that first.
Page 46, okay?
I took a few of the recipes down here. There's another great recipe, garlic lamb, from Vietnam, and one of the Vietnam chap. It's a great recipe, easy to make too. Not if you like lamb, but lamb is a great meat because it digests in a couple of hours, while beef is about 10, 11, 12 hours. And lamb has a taste to it, and I like it. Maybe that's why.
I haven't had lamb since I was a little kid. I remember liking it, but I couldn't tell you what it tastes like at all. I mean, it's been decades since I've last had it. My dad did not like lamb, so
Yeah,
we
but
don't have
don't buy the New Zealand or the Australian lamb because they're frozen, and there's something about them. They have a gamey taste. If you buy fresh lamb, you pay a couple of cents more for it, but it's a good lamb. In the Middle East, they use a lot of their dishes where they have meats that they eat not well cooked or raw even. and it doesn't seem to have any ill effects. It seems to be a good type of red meat, if you like red meat. That's the dish.
Don't put the pink in it. You also have the stir-fried cabbage from Malaysia. That's a very good dish.
Oh, yeah, that's a great dish. It just takes a few minutes to cook. These are all... Yeah. The stir-fried cabbage from Malaysia is one of the most easy, I would say, very easy dish. But most people don't know what to do with extra cabbage after they've made cabbage rolls or pickled cabbage. There's this great dish you mix with beef, or you could even use lamb, but it's only a little bit. But it's that special taste between the combination of both. And then he's got this really, really good one, steamed fish from Canton, from Cantonese style, and uses a double broiler for that. And no, it's perforated.
Perforated. But we use a couscousier, right? And it's simple. You just put the fish on top. You make the sauce. You steam the fish. Doesn't take long. Sauce on it. It's done. It's so good.
Wow. Now, when it comes to stir fry, and you're using a frying pan, do you want it to be as hot as possible, or just medium, or medium heat?
We do medium high. Medium high.
Medium high.
But
well, it depends. If it's heavier, you can put it higher. If it's a thin frying pan, you have to lower the heat. It's not as good as a wok, but it does the job.
Sure. So how long did it take for you to write this book, and how did you actually get started writing this book?
Well, I never knew Asiatic foods. I knew Middle Eastern foods because we ate it at home. My father came, and he got a homestead. He was given free land because you had to work to do things, but nothing grew because it was a depression year. It was like that in the central southern United States. People have to move out, but we lived there. And the first time I went to the city, I was 16 years old, and I went to. And I had some people I knew, they're young fellas, and they wanted to go and eat Chinese food. And I didn't know what it meant to eat Chinese food, and never heard of it. We had Chinese restaurants, but all they served was hamburger and, roast beef.
Funny.
They didn't serve Chinese food. And then if they served them, nobody would dare taste them, because we used to take our lunches. My mother would make Arabic food, and we'd take it for lunch, but we were afraid to have other kids see us eat it, so we'd eat it in the sort of secret behind the school.
Really?
So anyway, I had, but then after I went and tried it, and it seemed a good food to me. Then, because you were young, and it seemed to be so many stuff in it that hard to cook and things. But as the years went by, I really liked Chinese. Then when I traveled overseas, especially to Eastern Asia, I got to love the Asiatic food. And I started cooking it myself. And I found out I could make it easy. It wasn't hard to make after you knew what you were doing and you knew all about it. And then I thought, I talked to my mother and my sisters. You want to, cook me a Chinese meal? We can't cook it. It's too hard. Too many things in it, complicated. And anyway, when I got to start cooking our food, and I thought that I could make the Chinese food simple, and then because all the people I talked to were afraid of it, I said, well, I'm going to make it. It should sell. It should go. And I did. It took me years of traveling and collecting recipes. Wherever I traveled, I collected recipes. Then when I figured a couple of hundred, I would start thinking of making a book.
He's got this knack when we go somewhere. Let's say we're in in Spain, and we try a dish. He'll ask the waiter or he'll ask to speak to the chef, and he asks the chef what are the ingredients. The chef, then he creates it.
Wow.
Yeah, well, it's not exactly this.
Wait a minute. How can you know the proportions, how long to cook anything, and what to mix in what order, just by knowing the ingredients?
You know, at first I tried it. I had to try them out 2 or 3 times before I would get the correct taste that I wanted in it.
Wow.
The ingredients, after a while, you would know how much to fry the onion, how much to boil the lamb bones, how much to, you know, you get through experience, you get to know. So when you make a recipe, you say add beef. You know, you add the beef if it's ground different, and if it's cut small pieces or cut large pieces, how long it would take. And like now, I can make any recipe, usually 90% of the time, and I don't have to do it again. But if I want it, I can do it. Because you get through experience now. I've written about at least 2,000 or more articles about food. So
Wow.
I've had a lot of experience with it. And now it's easy for me to make. That's why I can get cookbooks easy out now, because I know I don't have to cook them 2 or 3 times. I cook them once, usually twice, to take a picture if I sell it to some paper or something, some publisher that wants something different. And the odd one I still don't do right, because I'll do again. It was not very often.
So we are really benefiting from years of experience.
Yeah, and
And
here, yes.
travel. Wow.
Yeah, it's not hard, but you have to love cooking, and you have to love the food. And
Excuse me, there it is. Done. Can you see that?
Beautiful. I wish I could taste it.
It smells good. Smell it. Is that good?
That is
Yeah,
gorgeous.
Really nice.
Gorgeous.
anyway,
Sample
that's it.
some for us and tell us how it tastes.
You want me to try now? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, no problem. You want to try some? I'm going to try it. Okay, watch me enjoy this. Here we go.
Please.
I need chopsticks. Perfect.
Oh, I have to enjoy that vicariously.
Oh my God, ginger and the garlic, but there's that oyster sauce, and we put a little sugar with it too because we have hot pepper in it, and it just tones it down beautifully. But you get it's a shock to so good, and the chicken being the breast, there's no fat, so it's delicious.
Oh my goodness.
I have to admit.
You know, it's if you were living next door, I would give you a meal every day, because I have so much food, I never know what to do with it.
Our neighbors love it. Our neighbors love it. There's
I
another.
believe very happily.
I was going to tell you, there's another dish that my father has basically introduced to Canada, and now I guess it's going to be, you know, hummus, how popular hummus is.
Sure.
Well, there's another one called
Muhammad.
Muhammara, Muhammara. It's from Syria, and it's made with roasted red peppers and walnuts, and it's a dip, and it's delicious because, again, you've got this series of spices blowing your mind away here, especially when you dip chips or crackers into it. It's so good. And you can
tell us the ingredients again.
It's got red peppers, right?
Red peppers, walnuts, pomegranate concentrate, pomegranate concentrate, basically, and a couple of spices.
This is what is used in a lot of the Middle Eastern cooking from Syria and Iraq, well, Iraq sort of in the Arabian Gulf. In his book, this is called, oops, let me put it in the, there.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
And this is called, in Arabic, it's called dips Roman, and it's available basically in any Middle Eastern store, anybody that sells Middle Eastern groceries. And also some of the regular big chains here now are selling it because it's like a souring agent, right?
Yeah,
but it does add a dark color to the food.
And it's sour, lemon, but it has a stronger taste.
But you put this with the muhammara. Muhammara in Arabic means red, to be red.
Oh, okay.
So
now,
that
in looking through the book, I do notice lots of ingredients that how can I put this? You need so many different spices, so many different condiments and ingredients. Would you say that there is a starter set of spices and condiments that a beginner should have on hand? That would be, you know, several different.
Most of them, you can put garam masala, which is an Indian spice, a mixture of spices in all the stews or soups. instead of putting all these spices, it would give you approximately the same taste. You can put and you can buy it in any store here in Canada. It must be the same in the United States. You know, you can. It's a mixture of spices. In the Middle East, it's called parat. But out here and in India, it's called garam masala, and it's a mixture of spices. If you put cumin, coriander, turmeric, and you put a teaspoon, you add them up and they come to a teaspoon. If you put a teaspoon of this garam masala, they'll give you the same effect as these, only a little bit more a collection of tastes. But makes it better too. It makes it, instead of putting a half teaspoon of this, a quarter teaspoon of this, and a pinch of this, you put a teaspoon of that, and it gives you the same effect. So if you have some of that, and instead of putting all these spices in, and if you don't have that many spices, you can put half a teaspoon or 3/4 teaspoon.
Okay. Okay. I'm a little curious about your other cookbooks. Now, I'm wondering, are all of your cookbooks dealing with the Middle East or Asia?
Not all of them. I have a cookbook called about bison, buffalo or bison, meat.
Oh.
It's cooked Middle Eastern style. It's a book about, you can take any beef or lamb and do it with a little bit longer cooking here and there, or a little bit different, but not much. I have a book for that, and there are very few. I think in Montana and North Dakota, the Bison Association is spreading this book. I think, not sure. That's what they tell me.
I have seen people taking orders at our local Durham Farmers Market for buffalo meat. So I guess it's becoming popular.
You see, buffalo meat. I'll tell you something. Buffalo meat, if you buy like under 3 years old, it's excellent. It's tasty. It doesn't have the wild taste, and it's healthy. You never get a disease from buffalo meat, unless they're raised, in different environment, like But if the buffalo is raised in the wild, it's not. You can eat it raw. The only meat you can eat raw without having any fear of affecting.
That's pretty unbelievable. What other cookbooks? Are you working on a cookbook now, by any chance?
Yeah, we're working on 2 of them. I'm working with my daughters because I'm 91 years old and I don't.
Wow.
So you don't move around as fast before now.
Yeah.
We're working on one cookbook. It's going to be an encyclopedia of Arab cooking, about 2,000 recipes. And
wow.
I have them all. I have the book From the Lands of Figs and Olives, the first cookbook I wrote. It's not quite as precise as the ones later, but it sold well. It's 20 years after I published it. 2018 years, and it's still selling as much as it did it when it first came out. I have another classic vegetarian cooking from the Middle East and North Africa. And I have another one called Arab Cooking on a Saskatchewan Homestead. It's about our family, the recipes they cooked, my mother cooked, on our farm, on our homestead, how we survived the Depression years. It's a history plus a cookbook. And I have Arabian Nights cookbook, which is the cooking of the Arabian Peninsula.
Nice.
I forget to get so many. I have. Yeah, I have the bison. What's the other one that I had from?
Medieval cooking.
We have 2 with my daughters. I have 2 books, the history of medieval Arab cooking, and they're published. One is by the University of Pennsylvania.
Scheherazad's Feast, it's called.
Okay.
The medieval Arab world, and the other one's about sweets, all about sweets. The history of traditional Arab sweets. We worked back from the 10th century, and we read manuscripts 10th to the 13th century, picked the recipes we wanted, recreated them. They haven't been made for 1,500 years. No, well, some of them are pre 10th century too. But whatever the case, they're magnificent recipes because the recipe books were written for the regal class, the nobility. So they had access, of course, to all the expensive ingredients, and of course that Silk Road again changed their world. So the more money you have, the more you want to try different things. But one of the more interesting products in, I guess, in the Middle East, talking about the Middle East, about Syria and Iraq, is eggplant. Now, eggplant plays a heavy role in Indian cuisine, in East Asian as well, right?
Yeah, well, not heavy role.
I know, but in the Middle East it does now. In India, definitely. So what happened, here's a little anecdote in history about food.
Okay.
So when Arabs first came across this vegetable that looked kind of strange, which we know is the eggplant, there's something in one of the manuscripts that we used, because then had anecdotes too, and it said that one of these people said that it looked like the testicles of the devil. That's how ugly the plant was to them.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't eat it because it had this horrible look. But what happened in the 8th century, the Caliph Harun al-Rashid, the famous of 1001 Nights, his son Ma'mun was getting married. So the woman he was marrying, her name was Buran, and Buran was originally Persian. So he, you know, how what is the countries marry to get to be friends, to become allies. So he marries her, and she, at her wedding, that this dish this dish made with eggplant. The eggplant was stuffed with meat and with spices and with pine nuts. She wanted that served. And, you know, the people from Iraq are looking at this strange dish, but because this new bride, who's going to be the upcoming caliph's wife, likes it, nothing changes in history. If the upper classes eat it, us, the common people, will try it. They loved it. And it became a common and very popular dish, the eggplant. They started doing things with it. Now you've got hundreds of versions of eggplant now, different dishes.
Interesting.
History. People love food. People identify their, also in history, they also were always worried about health. So a lot of them would eat good foods, even though, like the sweets, for example, one of the medical texts from the 11th century recommends this sweet that you must eat if you have a sore throat. Like, it's great.
Wow. I want to ask about sweets because I like sweets. I know nothing about Arabic or Middle Eastern sweets. I can't imagine they use chocolate, right? Isn't that this side of the world? I mean, what ingredients are used in sweets?
No, not chocolate. Chocolate is from the Americas.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many dishes. By the way, I do Mexican foods, a lot of Mexican food, but I don't do take the heat out of it.
Yeah, he takes the heat out. Middle Eastern sweets use a lot of sugar, a lot of nuts, especially almonds, pine nuts, cashews lately, and pistachios. Pistachios, in fact, there's a dish in the medieval times that was a chicken that they stuffed with pistachios and sugar and a whole bunch of spices, and they made a glaze for it too. It's a strange chicken, but it's very good. But anyways, those sweets, and then their cookies are stuffed with those kind of ingredients, and dates. Dates are very common. Dates are very good. So when I said that my mother taught us the traditional sweets, those are the sweets I'm talking about. You know, if you don't eat them, like at Christmas or Ramadan or Easter, you have to have them because it connects you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Reminds you of home. Reminds you of your history, your culture.
You know,
yes.
It's the most important sweet in the Middle East is the baklava, and it's a great sweet. It's not hard to make, and nobody doesn't like it. Nobody, if you'd eat it now and you've never ate it before, you would like it.
So baklava is made with phyllo dough. And phyllo dough is that very, very thin dough. My mother used to make it from scratch. But now you can buy it in any store, any food store. They have it frozen. You let it thaw in the refrigerator for 8 hours, and it's ready for you. Very easy to use. But you have to work with it quick or it dries up.
Okay. Well, we could talk for days about this. This is so fascinating and very exciting for me to talk with the two of you.
Thank you, Patricia.
Thank you, Patricia.
So how can people find out more about your books, Mr. Salloum?
Yes.
How do they find out about your books?
It's the Amazon. Amazon carries them all.
And in the States, also Barnes & Nobles.
Barnes & Noble.
Barnes & Noble, yeah.
And here in Canada, the libraries have them all.
Yeah, I know, but they have Amazon.ca too here. Yeah, they're available anywhere on the web. But the most important thing is when you try his foods, and not because he's my father, but simply because he has tested, retested, and 3 times tested recipes. He won't put them in the book until they're perfected. And he knows what my mother's generation, my mother's and father's generation, really, it was a madman era. Women would stay home and cook. And we always came home from school and there was always something like a full meal on the table. It's all changed now. So they're looking for things to make that are exotic, tasty, haute couture kind of thing, fine dining, and you can get it in this book, honestly. But it's so interesting because there's so many dishes, like lentil soup. How many times can you eat lentil soup? He's got about 6 versions of lentil soup, and they're delicious.
Wonderful. Yeah. So I highly recommend that people check this book out. Again, it's called Asian Cooking Made Simple by Habeeb Salloum. And I want to thank you so much for being on the show, Mr. Salloum, and also Mona for making that dish that I wish I could have some of, but unfortunately it doesn't work out over the internet.
Here you go.
She likes people. No, and I want to thank you because you're such a nice interviewer.
Yes, thank you, Patricia, for your interest. Believe me, that's really important.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I actually met Heather Ripke over the internet, and I invited her to let me know of any authors who might want to be interviewed. And again, she's with Sweetgrass Books. They're the ones who put this book out, and that's a division of Farcountry Press. So again, I wanted to thank her. And thank the 2 of you. I bet you throw some great parties.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm more fun than my father. Let me add that as a postscript, okay?
No, she likes butting in.
Both of you are really great, and I really enjoyed interviewing you.
Well, we enjoyed meeting you like this, and welcome to Toronto anytime.
Yeah, our home is your home if you come.
Well, thank you.
Yes,
so
vuestra casa es su casa, they say in Espanol, right?
Exactly. Mi casa es su casa. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Patricia, and keep in touch, okay?
I will. And folks, I hope you enjoyed that. If you'd like to be a guest on TV Skywriter, just write to me at durhamskywriter@gmail.com. There is a local edition. It's called TV Skywriter, local edition. For those of us in the Triangle area of North Carolina, that's Durham and Raleigh, Chapel Hill, Hillsborough, Carrboro, etc., etc. Again, you can write to me at durhamskywriter@gmail.com. Be sure to read the Durham Skywriter. That's Durham, North Carolina's online community paper. All positive, chock full of information. And with that, I bid you adieu, and I'll see you next week, same time. Ciao for now.